For centuries, skeptics argued that the Red Sea crossing was nothing more than a myth, a story invented by a captured people to explain their escape. No Egyptian records of a drowned army, no archaeological evidence beneath the waves, no physical proof that any mass migration ever crossed this body of water. Just a story. Then, underwater explorers found something that shouldn't be there. Chariot wheels, coral-encrusted, distinctive in design, resting on an underwater land bridge, at the exact point where the biblical account places the crossing. And what those coral-covered artifacts reveal about the Exodus narrative has forced even skeptical archaeologists to reconsider what they thought they knew. In this investigation, you will walk the shoreline where millions are said to have crossed. You will examine the coral-encrusted chariot wheels that date to the 18th Dynasty, the era of the biblical Exodus, and you will see the geological formation that geologists admit they cannot easily explain. This is the Red Sea crossing evidence. Let us begin where every investigation must, with the text itself. The book of Exodus describes a moment of impossible geometry. The Israelites, having fled Egypt, find themselves trapped. Pharaoh's army behind them, the Red Sea before them. No escape route, no alternative path. And then, according to Exodus chapter 14, Moses stretches out his hand. An east wind blows all night, the waters divide, and the Israelites cross on dry ground. When the Egyptian chariots pursue, the waters return, the army is destroyed, the crossing is complete. For centuries, this account existed in a category separate from history. It was theology, it was tradition, it was anything but verifiable fact. And then the ground started talking. The first question any archaeologist must answer is deceptively simple. Where did this happen? The traditional identification places the crossing at the Gulf of Suez, the western arm of the Red Sea. But there is a problem with the Suez theory. The Gulf of Suez is deep, hundreds of meters deep in places. It is difficult to imagine any natural mechanism that could expose a walkable path across such depths. And then there is the geographical problem. The biblical text does not describe a direct route from Egypt to the Red Sea. It describes a route that avoids the Philistine highway, a route that turns back, a route that leads to a specific location the text calls Pi Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, opposite Baal Zephon. These are not vague geographical references, they are specific place names. And when you plot them on a map, they do not point to the Gulf of Suez. They point to the Gulf of Aqaba, the eastern arm of the Red Sea, specifically to a beachhead on the western shore called Nuweiba. Nuweiba is an Arabic name. It means bubbling springs, and it sits on a geographical feature that, once you see it, you cannot unsee. Beneath the waters of the Gulf of Aqaba, stretching from Nuweiba on the west to the Saudi Arabian shore on the east, lies an underwater land bridge. It is a raised ridge of the sea floor. On either side, the gulf plunges to depths of over 900 meters, nearly 3,000 feet. But along this ridge, the depth is dramatically shallower. In places, less than 100 meters. What makes this formation remarkable is not just its existence, it is its location. It is the only natural land bridge across the entire Gulf of Aqaba. There is no other crossing point for hundreds of kilometers in either direction. If you were to cross this body of water on foot, this is where you would cross. There is no alternative. And directly on the western end of this land bridge sits a massive beach, the only beach on the entire Gulf of Aqaba capable of accommodating a large encampment. It is the beach at Nuweiba. We have a crossing point that fits the geography. We have a beach that fits the description of the encampment. But what about the evidence beneath the surface? In 1978, a team of divers began systematically exploring the sea floor along the Nuweiba land bridge. What they found defied explanation. Scattered across the underwater ridge were coral-encrusted forms. At first glance, they appeared to be ordinary coral growths, common on any reef in the Red Sea. But on closer inspection, these forms were not random. They had shape, they had symmetry, they had a structure that coral alone does not produce. They were chariot wheels. Coral is a living organism. It grows on surfaces. It encrusts them. Over centuries, it can completely envelop an object while preserving its shape. And when you examine these coral formations, you can see the unmistakable outline of ancient wheels, spokes radiating from a central hub. 4-spoke wheels, 6-spoke wheels. The distinctive design of Egyptian war chariots. But coral encrustation presents a challenge. It obscures the object beneath. So in the decades since the initial discovery, divers have carefully removed coral samples from several of these formations. And what they found beneath the coral was metal. Gold-plated metal in some cases. The kind of metal used on the chariots of Egyptian royalty and high-ranking military officers. This is not speculation. This is not interpretation. This is what the Earth has surrendered. The design of the chariot wheels is critical to dating the evidence. Egyptian chariot technology evolved over centuries. The earliest chariots used 4-spoke wheels. By the 14th century BC, the 18th dynasty, 6-spoke wheels had become standard for war chariots. By the 13th century BC, 8-spoke wheels appear in Egyptian artwork and archaeological contexts. The wheels discovered at Nuweiba include both 4-spoke and 6-spoke designs. This places them firmly in the 18th dynasty, the period from approximately 1550 to 1292 BC. Why does this matter? Because the 18th dynasty is the era in which many scholars place the biblical Exodus. It is the dynasty of Thutmose III, of Amenhotep II, of the pharaohs who built and lost an empire. The chariot wheel evidence at Nuweiba aligns with the time window in which the biblical Exodus, if it occurred as described, would have taken place. We have artifacts. We have dating that fits the biblical timeline. But there is more. On the Saudi Arabian shore, directly opposite Nuweiba, a stone pillar was discovered in the 1980s. It was inscribed in ancient Hebrew. The inscription referenced Mizraim, Egypt, Solomon, the king, Edom, the territory, death, the judgment, Pharaoh, the ruler, Moses, the prophet, Yahweh, the name of God. A matching pillar was later found on the Nuweiba side, though its inscriptions had been removed, possibly by Israeli authorities after the 1967 war. King Solomon reigned in the 10th century BC, roughly 400 to 500 years after the Exodus. The pillars at Nuweiba may represent a memorial, a marker placed by Solomon or his successors to commemorate the location of the crossing. Now, markers do not prove an event occurred, but they tell us something important. They tell us that people in the 10th century BC, centuries after the event, believed this specific location was the crossing point. They invested resources in marking it. They considered it significant enough to memorialize in stone. Let us be rigorous. Let us examine the alternative explanations. Alternative 1. The coral formations are natural. They are not chariot wheels at all. They are ordinary coral growths that happen to resemble wheels. This is possible. Coral can form in circular patterns. The human brain seeks familiar shapes in random structures. But here is what weakens this explanation. The coral formations are not randomly distributed across the reef. They are concentrated along the land bridge. They are found in clusters. And when divers have removed coral samples, they have found manufactured metal beneath. Metal that no natural process produces. Alternative 2. The wheels are from a later period. They are not from the 18th dynasty at all. They are from the Greco-Roman period or the Byzantine era. But this faces a problem. The wheel designs, 4-spoke and 6-spoke, are characteristic of the Egyptian New Kingdom, specifically the 18th dynasty. Later Egyptian chariots used more spokes. Greek and Roman chariots had different designs entirely. The typology points to the 18th dynasty and the 18th dynasty alone. Alternative 3. The wheels are from a shipwreck. A cargo vessel carrying Egyptian artifacts sank at this location, scattering its contents across the sea floor. This is possible, but unlikely for one reason. The artifacts are not concentrated in a single debris field. They are spread along the land bridge, a path. They are found in the pattern you would expect if vehicles were traveling across the ridge, not if they fell from a single sinking vessel. This is what we call a convergence of evidence. We have a site that fits the geography. Nuweiba is the only location on the Gulf of Aqaba consistent with the biblical place names: Pi-Hahiroth, Migdol, Baal-Zephon. We have a geological formation that fits the route. The underwater land bridge provides the only natural crossing path across the Gulf, shallow enough that a wind-driven phenomenon could theoretically expose it. We have artifacts that fit the time period: chariot wheels in 4-spoke and 6-spoke patterns dating to the 18th dynasty, the era of the biblical Exodus. We have memorial markers that fit the tradition, pillars erected centuries later, suggesting that this location was venerated as the crossing site in antiquity. And we have metal beneath the coral, gold-plated fittings consistent with Egyptian military chariots that no natural process can explain. None of these lines of evidence, standing alone, proves the Exodus. But when they converge, when geography, geology, artifact typology, and ancient tradition all point to the same location at the same time, the burden of explanation shifts. The iron and the coral agree with the parchment. Does the archaeological evidence at Nuweiba prove that the Red Sea crossing happened exactly as the Book of Exodus describes? No, archaeology does not prove miracles. It cannot confirm that an east wind blew all night. It cannot verify that a hand stretched out and the waters divided. These are matters beyond the reach of excavation and artifact analysis. But what archaeology can do, what it is doing, is grounding the narrative in history. It is demonstrating that the geographical details in the biblical text are not imaginary, that the time frame is not fabricated, that the material culture, the chariots, the route, the encampment site, is consistent with an 18th dynasty exodus. How many times has someone said there is no evidence, when what they really meant was, we have not found it yet? The ground keeps confirming the book. I am your guide through the evidence that connects scripture to soil, belief to bone, and history to the artifacts buried beneath our feet. If this investigation has challenged your assumptions or strengthened them, enlist in our next expedition. Hit the subscribe button right now. Our next investigation goes where the evidence leads. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep seeking the truth. I will see you on the next ArchaeoQuest.